Hello, welcome to another episode of the Buyer Seller. I'm so excited to have two women in a row on this podcast so far. So today we have with us Dessalen Wood, and we go way back to when I was with Thought Exchange. So I'm really excited about this one to reconnect with Des, who is currently the CHRO at Syntax. So I'm just going to pass this over to you, Des, to share about you, what you do currently, and we'll take it from there.
I'm also very excited to be back here and speaking with you, Kat. Obviously, I was excited to have you reach out. I'm currently the Chief People Officer here at Syntax. I've been here just over a year, and we're a global company based in Montreal, which is where I live. So that was very exciting for me. That provides cloud management services, ERP, security, IT services, consulting. So really the full gamut in an IT services organization. And this has been a really interesting role because the company is global and we have teams in multiple countries and we are functioning around the clock. And so I've been able to learn a lot about how people function around the world, the similarities, the differences, and it's been a very interesting experience.
Amazing. It sounds exciting and it sounds like a lot of work all at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Buyer Seller is a podcast designed to give buyers a voice at the sales training table. And so I'd like to hear what you, as a business leader, being prospected by different sellers, what you think that whole process should look like. So we're going to jump right into the next question, which is what memorable experience do you have with sales that has really stood out for you?
Such a good question, because it's a little bit of a story for me, a story that actually, in some sense, changed the route of my career. And that's that I was speaking at a conferences when I was with a couple of roles ago when I was with Cineplex, and I happened to be speaking at a conference where Thought Exchange was a sponsor. And the CEO at the time, had come up and talked to me and had done a presentation, and over dinner we chatted and really got really into depth around the challenges around bringing change and the challenges in decentralized or centralized decision making in a company that had diversified quite quickly in terms of its model. And I was somebody who I really expressed that I had an offsite coming out and I was going to be, doing some workshops on decision making. And he was able to position the product as the tool that I should use at that offsite and offered me a chance just to use it there. And it was, such an urgent need I had. And it was an exciting marriage of technology with facilitation. And I think, I basically was hooked from that experience of getting to try it live and getting to then speak with the product people after about how I'd use the tool and having even a voice in the direction of the tool. And so that was what happened in terms of, I'd say the most memorable experience was the connection we made, the business discussion we had that was so very, I would say, hearty, and that the resulting offer to try the product with support, I wasn't just thrown out on my own, but here's how to do it. And then the subsequent decision to purchase the product and the relationship I had with the team as a result of my use cases really became a bigger relationship for me than just a vendor. It was really like a partner and a the words we've learned from some of our past at Thought Exchange, like a co-conspirator, someone who was really working with me to help me figure out my business problems. And so that really struck me, that the relationship built before, during, and after the sale. Very memorable.
Yeah, so I'm hearing connection to business need, the building of a relationship, and then one thing I really, that really stood out was moving from that vendor mindset to partner mindset. I think that's really strong because even for me as an SDR right now at the company where I am, we talk about booking business and not just booking meetings. And I think it's that same mindset where you're coming to the conversation with, I want to add value to this business. I just want to tick a box, and
Hmm.
that's what drives that relationship and that growth over time, even if
Hmm.
so that's really amazing. Um, okay, so do you want to share your story with
Well, it's a funny thing. I have the smile on my face because, what it was interesting when you talked to me about, what's your perspective on like being a buyer? What am I looking for from a seller? And, what we were chatting about initially was this interesting experience I had, which is that, as a result of my relationship with Thought Exchange, I was a customer for a couple of years. And then I made the decision through an offer to come on board and do some of that sales work myself, which was building the business around the corporate business case around selling to CHROs. And by doing that would be really to be a product expert who could then understand the forces in the market and what was going on with my colleagues and help them find ways to use the tool. And so I flipped from somebody who was a buyer. I was like on the other side of the relationship to being in the sales side, and really gained an appreciation for differentiating yourself in sales by having a deep knowledge of the business challenges that the person's in. So because I was speaking largely to my own colleagues, I could really understand the challenges they faced and really place our solution as a tool inside multiple challenges that were happening. And because of that, able to get to that partner status really quickly as that person who's solving along with you, and that person who is not necessarily just trying to show features or talk about payment plans, but just really talk about inherently the challenges you're facing and what we can do to really help you find solutions. And so I think that for me, that aspect was big, because when I went back to being in my role at Syntax, I think I really understand now what gets me hooked on a product is similar to how I was positioning Thought Exchange to my peers, which is being really realistic about the situation somebody's in and what they have to do and what they need this product to do inside that challenge, as opposed to kind of trying to create situations. Like, what you could use this for? You could use this for that. What you could, it was more like, I get it. I feel it. It's hard. I'd like to show you something I've done. I'd like to explain to you why I did it and why it works, why it doesn't work. And I think that level of honesty and connectivity that I felt at the beginning of the relationship, I brought to the customers. And then now that I'm on this side of it, I have different needs, as a global company. My team has come together in the last year. We were multiple teams around multiple geographies, and we're coming together as one team. We're looking at like our systems, we're looking at our processes, we're looking at our programs. And, when I think of what I miss is someone who can really look at the age and stage of the company I'm in and deeply understand where I'm at, so that I'm not explaining it and then they're trying to adapt quickly to say, no, what we do is exactly what you need, but they don't really know. Is really having someone come in and say, I know where you're at. And I know probably the top 5 things that are hard for you. And I think I have a way to help. And that's the thing I think is such an impactful way to approach, is to have a deep subject matter expertise. And one of the things that I found interesting when I was in my role, more in a sales role, was that we were at a lot of conferences or webinars or online things, just doing, whatever we'd been sponsoring. And, the team would be doing other emails to other things, being productive, but sitting outside the sessions in a booth or in the back of the room, typing away at their work. And one of the opportunities I felt the team was missing was to go to the sessions and actually learn what was going on, see the questions people are asking, understand where they're at, and then getting even deeper with how you're going to connect what you do to what was going on in that room. And I found myself surprised by the lack of curiosity around that, but not knowing that that learning was going to be vital to the connections you were going to be able to make later on when you had that one-on-one meeting or at the cocktail. And so it might sound funny to you. So yes, I did HR stuff. So you think, well, of course you went into HR sessions. I went to a lot of conferences that had nothing to do with HR. One of them was the oil and gas conference. So I went to an oil and gas conference in Houston. Try to think of a place that, you know, an HR lady from Canada is not used to being. And that's in Texas at the oil and gas conference. I went to the sessions on pipeline, on, you know, the rigs, on like I found out what they eat, what they feed people. And I had to do a 2-hour session in the afternoon on motivation and using thought exchange. And I could really loop in everything from, you know, how people felt about the food to safety to, you know, all the different values that people have. And so I really think that those moments, those opportunities, whether I was in a finance conference, an oil and gas operations, business transformation, I always stayed in the sessions and tried to deeply understand where people were before I went to try to sell to them.
Wow. I was just writing away, and you've answered the next question, because someone may be listening and saying, oh, yeah, yes, you came from HR, and of course you have that deep insight, but you've already spoken about attending relevant conferences, you know, going where these people go. I also wrote down reading industry content, you know, just immersing yourself, you know, if that's the word, in the space of, and trying to get into the mind and the day-to-day of the person you want to sell to. That's so powerful. I've written, and you know, some of the things that just came to my mind when you were speaking that this kind of selling would drive are things like credibility, authenticity, that empathy, because you have a deep understanding of where they are, and a mindset of service. You know, you're not just coming with this hard salesy pitch. You really want to serve and make a difference. So even the way that you communicate, the emails, the phone calls will be richer and more valuable. So that's so great. And then you talked about subject matter expertise. That's something that has come up quite a bit. You know, I follow some influencers, sales influencers, and some of them really spend time talking about this topic and just building this depth of expertise in an area that you even become like the go-to person, like in that space as a salesperson. So that's so powerful. Okay, so moving forward, what's one powerful outreach medium that you think salespeople are underutilizing to reach business leaders like you?
Well, you know, I think it almost goes back to what we were just chatting with, which is, you know, there's so many online industry events that you can attend that are free. You know, in the old world, you would say conferences, but you can't necessarily get yourself places. But whether it's online events or reading the articles people post on LinkedIn, but, you know, what I think is that an outreach that's really rooted in a shared experience of something. So if I'm, you know, even now, if I'm on any kind of roundtable, I always click and look at the participants. Always, I'm always interested, and not to freak anyone out that I do this, but I often will like screenshot who's there, and then I'll link in with them after because we have similar interests. And then I'm interested in what they're interested in, and that expands my knowledge field. But I actually learned that from being a salesperson, because we would be sponsoring these conferences. I would be listening, and I would think, I want to make sure I reach out to these people, but that I'm immersed in what their content is and what their topics are, so that I can really ensure that I'm relevant beyond the surface of a conversation. So I kind of like to use the metaphor of like an onion, you know, the comparison, which is like, there's so much surface stuff people touch, but I'm ready to go down in there. I can go to the basement. Like, I have read your posts, I have seen what you do, I've been to the same conference or webinar that you were at, and I can sort of get in there with like a little nugget of something that I'm sure you're gonna go like, oh my God, that was the craziest thing that just happened there, you know. And I think that like breaks the ice. And I think for me, if someone's ever at a place I'm at, and I call that like, even if it's in a posting conversation on LinkedIn, or they've attended the webinar and they were like, hey, I was on that webinar, I thought it was really interesting when that person or you said this. it's like we already passed that first weird, like, hi, I'm so and so, you've never heard from me. And I don't know if I ever would have felt comfortable doing a reach out to somebody I hadn't kind of met in some version of whatever meeting is today. And, it used to be face-to-face conferences, webinars, but I have met them in some kind of interactive forum. And then my reach out feels far more natural and real. And I think that's it. There's no time investment to do this, of course. But I think that instead of like spraying a bunch of people with a hope that somebody answers you, you're really targeting a relationship that you've nurtured by investing some time to be inside the person's experience.
Deep curiosity. That's all I'm just hearing.
Yeah.
Deep,
Curiosity and a
and I like
genuine
the onion
interest,
analogy.
and a genuine understanding, of those things, and I think that part of my experience going to those conferences that were really not necessarily, I went to a decent number of financial ones, you're understanding that their challenges are slightly different, and the things that are their irritants are different, and their business challenges are. And so how do you then take that and recreate your value prop around the reality of it, instead of trying to sort of shove them into something that you've created that's very narrow? And I think that's the piece I feel whenever I've clicked back on something. It's a person seems to really understand what my challenge is.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. So as a leader who often needs to sell your own ideas to people across the organization, what tactics or tools do you fall back on to get your point across?
That's it, and I think HR really has a lot of sales, and I joke to people that I just sell ideas now. I sell concepts. Try selling a behavior change, that's real tough. There's that's a tough one to change someone's behavior. So I think that my sales skills don't wane in this role. We call them influence, we call them different things, but really it's all part of it. I would say the thing that I rely on is similar to what I talk about in sales, is to take the time to get to know people and to understand, again, where they're at in the business, and that I'm not just dropping in solutions because they're the things I'm used to, or they're the things that I'm just used to doing. And I find whenever I start doing that, I feel the resistance start right away. Like, why are we doing this? Do we have time for this? Considering this and this is going on, why are we? And when someone's saying that to me, it's a real great way to have an honest reflection that I'm sort of just doing my own thing, but I'm not ensuring that my solution is relevant to the business need now. And if even what I want to do is just something no one's thought about yet, so they don't see value in it. My comment to my team is, listen, don't try to fill a hole that nobody even thinks is there, right? You're coming, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And they're like, why? So you have to ensure that as you explain, that you highlight where the deficiency is, and then introduce your idea, concept, process, program as a solution to that deficiency. But if we don't agree that there's a deficiency, and we don't actually think that deficiency is important, then that activity is not going to be important, and that idea won't be important. So when people say things to me like, I can't get a seat at the table, or, I can't get listened to, and they're acting like there's like a barrier to them as a person. And I hear this from people at all points in their career. I'm thinking, you just haven't figured out the relevance you bring. Because once you have a relevant solution that's important to a problem we all recognize, everybody's pulling out chairs at the table. They won't let you leave. They're literally going to hold you there, because they're going to say, like, you bring so much value to what we need to fix here, or what we want to get to as the next level in our development, either one. But if you're not able to position what you do as either a place to remedy a situation or to push a business forward, then your idea is just in a sea of other interesting ideas that leaders hear all day, every day. And just so you know, ideas are more work. Right? That's what you're doing. You're saying in the same 24-hour period, with everything you have to do, I'm bringing another thing. So if you don't think this is a thing we need, the likelihood you're going to adopt it is pretty low. And so I think that that's something I have brought from sales, is an understanding of those things, which is that if what I'm bringing forward is getting a big flat no, instead of thinking it's personal or my timing was bad, I really think there's either no, we're not aligned to the deficiency, or the way I explain the solution doesn't drive the sense of urgency I feel. So I've got to go back and rethink that. And I do not take it personally, not at all.
Great. So I'm hearing that, back and forth and being open to feedback. One of the greatest quotes that I like to work with whenever I get feedback is a gift. And the mentor who taught that concept to me would say, look, not everyone would wrap it nicely, not everyone would be constructive, but you just have a mindset that it's a gift. However it comes, I'm going to take it and I'm going to work with it to, decide how I move forward. So that's a great one. In the last few
It
minutes
is.
we have here together, Des, any final thoughts, anything you want to make sure that you say before we wrap this up?
Yeah, that's such a, I realize the challenge that sales has, which is, how do you differentiate yourself in that sea of messages and outreaches and pings everybody gets? How do you find your relevance and your voice? And I see a lot of interesting things from people sending little videos to putting in their, I can say like in their subject line, strange things, like, why don't you ever want to talk to me and stuff. Some of that doesn't work for me. I have to say, that's probably not what works for me, but I understand that differentiation and standing out is a real challenge. And so I think for me, knowing that the goal of those messages is to stand out and differentiate, I think my advice is differentiate by taking the time, even if it's a subject that you have no understanding or interest in, which I can tell you I've done now, is to take the time to do that work and to connect with the person in another way before that first reach out. So that instead of sending a note that says reply to, even though it's not a real reply, or forward, or all those little techniques, I really would love it to be a true reply because we've had some kind of a connection. And so go find people where they're at. Meet them where they're at, whether it's what they're reading, what they're doing, what they're attending, and start the relationship in there with that. And I think for me, that's a really important part to connecting with me. And I think it would be a good technique, even if it takes a little bit more time than what people are currently doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for making the time out of your very busy schedule to work on this idea.
Oh, I'm very happy to help you, Kat. I'm very happy to help you and to see you be successful as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Des. I really appreciate our time together, and I'm excited to share this with the community that is following this podcast. So,
all right.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you and take care. And I'm also wishing you and whoever is watching this, tremendous success. And I think it's wonderful to be curious about the buyer's perspective as a seller. And like I can say, having done both sides, I see the power in having these wonderful learning opportunities for sellers. So it's wonderful you're doing this.
Thank you. Have a good one, Des.
You too. Take care.
Yeah, bye.